Hey y'all, Erin here again, and I'm here to walk through the second part of our experimentation product and how to walk through this demo for experimentation and how to make the most of it for funnel experiments. So we're gonna pick up right off where we left off last time with we've got our LaunchDarkly demo environment shown up here on the left-hand side of my screen. I'm running this locally, but it is the same version you'll see on your version app. We're gonna go and be working in this measure and experiment, which will bring up the storefront type situation. And then we're going to be setting up our first funnel experiment. So in a funnel experiment, the cool part about it is you're going to watch how people move through a funnel. So it's like a checkout flows are a really great example when this can be relevant, or anytime that a user would do a series of steps. You want to see at each step when something is changing and what impacts those little changes have on the user flow and the user journey. So we'll walk through how to do that. I've already got everything set up within the tutorials here, but I'll show you how to kind of walk through. So again, we're going to start, and I'm just going to make sure that you can see our changes. A couple of things to know, as with other kind of features and when you're using any of the track features, we're going to be working with a browser that does not have AdBlock installed on it. So AdBlock does kind of throw off our tracking and will kind of impact our use of live events. So you won't be able to see those things happening. But without further ado, let's begin. We're going to first start in this Galaxy Marketplace, so sign in with SSO. We're now in our storefront thing, and I'll make this window just a little bigger for y'all to see what we're working with here. Here we go. Got some. And there's our beautiful shop there. So we've got our Galaxy Marketplace. Let's say if we're going to test this checkout flow option. So when we're working on a checkout flow, what you'll do is you're thinking typically it's visit an item, add the item to your cart, and then actually open the cart. So you have to see, did you actually go to the cart to see if you want to check out, and then did the checkout process work? So our first steps are going to be making sure that all of those are set up and we've got the appropriate track calls for each of those items. So navigating to our LaunchDarkly interface, we're going to go ahead and click into our metrics. So again, these are we want to think about the metric event or the metric experiments that we're creating. So the metric is based off of a metric event established in LaunchDarkly. So you'll see I've got some that I'm using for testing, like my yay flag ones, but we have things like customer checkout, shopping cart access, item added, store accessed, and those stock APIs. But we won't be touching all of those for now. If we click on the store accessed, we can see what the event kind is, the event key, if it has a higher or lower success criteria, and what items are working. So you can see also what experiments each metric is connected to. Additionally, LaunchDarkly has this concept of a metric group. So if you're wanting to test a few metrics in combination, like again, that shopping checkout sequence, we can navigate back and we'll see this starting okay, we've got the shopping cart accessed. We've got that cart access key and they're moving through the funnel. So we're tracking each one and you can group things together. So again, a checkout flow would be a great way to use a group metric or a metric group. And you can set these up in advance. So instead of doing this within the experimentation, I actually think it's easier to set up and create a metric group before you even get to that experimentation phase. It makes it very easy to click first. So all of these are connected. If we click in, you can even see what are all the different details of that shopping cart funnel. So these are all connected to the different metrics: store accessed, item added, shopping cart accessed, and customer checkout. You'll also see any funnel connections that these are connected to. So anytime that you're testing different funnels, you'll be able to see that now, and we can even see where they're running and what environment they're running in. So yes, you can create these metrics across environments. Now let's go to the experimentation side and actually build the experiment. We're going to first navigate to the experimentation part of the page. And you'll see I've got one with this grow engagement with key stores. So we're going to make a very similar one and test it out, but I want to show you what it looks like to create it from start and finish. And then we'll check out the completed one that already has some events under it. So we'll start by clicking create experiment. And our experiment, we want to, we always give it a name, make sure they're really descriptive. So this one is going to be grow, improve checkout flow. Give it a good name. And I've just quickly tossed in a quick little hypothesis here. So if we adjust the header check to better copy, we can drive better into attention into the stores in question and greater conversion of checkout activity. So really changing, we just adjust that header text copy like we worked on in that first part of our flag where it was like buy now, limited time, etc. That is going to drive so much better conversion. So we're not just testing the binary, like did someone click on the event or not and add it to cart. We're checking that add to cart, visited cart and actual checkout process. It's a little more in depth than just the add to cart. We want to make it a funnel because that's a multi-step process. Randomization unit and attributes, we're going to be using it, randomizing it by user, so really dividing that up there. Attributes, again, we can always determine like where do we want to learn more about our different folks. So we can give them a role or email. Anytime that you want segments, like I want to sort by users and then give another segment like sort by email as well or sort by role, or even if they're in a beta program, that's when you're going to want to use those randomization units. From there, we'll click next. And this is what happens. We've already created our metric group, so I can go ahead and just select on that shopping cart funnel. And you'll see right here, I can automatically see the rows here. If I wanted to add a secondary metric, I can do so here. So if I want to just add different store access or shopping cart access or test other details, I can do so here. For the sake of simplicity, we won't be doing that for today. I'll then click next. We'll then work on our flag variation. So we want to make sure that our flag has everything we need within the environment. So for this one, we're going to be using that featured store, or it's going to have that store highlight text, which is the one we're working on. You'll see that this one already has an experiment configured. So we'll use the 9, but I'll show you what this looks like. What you'll use for the official demo is going to be that 10, that store highlight text. And it'll have us to set up, it'll make those variations based on the store headers. Again, we'll be using that version, that flag 10. You'll set the audience, so which type of audience and how do you want to divide up your audience? Do you want most of it to be 50-50 split, 70-30, or even going down to a 15%, and just impacting a smaller part of your audience can be really helpful, and that's a good point to bring up at this point. And then you'll select finish. So let's pop into this other experiment. I don't need to save this one to show you what it looks like when we've got an experiment up and running. So when you see an experiment and they're up and running, we can go ahead and click. It'll have that nice little running tab. It'll tell you when it started, when they started working on it. It'll tell you the type of experiment and all the other issues that we had created in that drop-down flow. So you can see our step 1, step 2, they've accessed the store, they are adding an item to a cart, they'll view the shopping cart, and then go to customer checkout. Then you'll go through the different variations. So these variations are all kind of based on that store highlight text where it has the control, final sale, and final hours that we worked on that first one. And then you'll always want to make sure that we're selecting that control, but that's something you determine within the flag itself. And lastly, that kind of default of how do we divide and conquer the last bit of things, like how much do we want each one to get to test that traffic. Now that we've got this, the cool thing about LaunchDarkly is you can create different iterations. So say we did this and then we realized halfway through that 2 of them were really successful, that third one was falling behind, we can actually make a different iteration where we're changing the flow or changing the flag or different details of the experiment, but keeping the data somewhat together so you can see what impacts changing little features had on different variations. And it'll show you kind of a log of what type of variations are out there. But let's check out this experiment results to see what we've got. So it'll tell you right at the top that nice bright blue analyzing that it's still running. The cool thing about experimentation when it comes to analyzing results is with experimentation, we do use a Bayesian type of statistics. And the nice part about that is that you don't have to have you can stop the experiment at any time. You're not waiting. It will tell you a statistically significant role, but you can stop that experiment at any time. Best practices often mean that you're going to be running an experiment, working on a period or a phase of time that you'll have, normal website data. So testing between the weeks between Christmas and New Year's are probably not going to be seeing those normal online behaviors. So the week of Black Friday is great to test for comparison against other Black Fridays, but it's going to be different from our day-to-day shopping habits online. So really paying attention to the time frame that you're running an experiment. Talking to Aaron Montana, who is our experimentation expert, he's kind of recommended at least a 2-week period. Or the cool thing about LaunchDarkly is it does give you when it's statistically significant amount of information, when you've gotten enough information to be successful. So you can start, here's our variations. We can see it's 33 They've been making sure that all 3% getting that. So here's the actual number of user contexts that have gotten that data for a total of 9,912 individuals. Now this page is kind of tells us what we break down the funnel group statistics here. So we can see from here, it'll kind of tell us that probability to be best. It'll make a recommendation. The cool part about LaunchDarkly is one of the things you can automate is if a certain part becomes better at one point, you can choose it like automatically. If it hits above a certain point, go ahead and turn that flag or set that to be true. So we can see that final hour seems to be our best statistic. We can even see and explore these little further details here. And I'm going to make my screen a little bigger so you can see more of the details. But our last item added, we've got, it looks like, again, that statistically the probability to be best is that sale, making sure that most of those people hit that sale. So while, yes, the final hours got most people past that store access point and they've gone past that store access, the one that actually got people to convert to that cart, it's pretty similar. So if that makes sense, I'm going to repeat that just so for clarity, but this probability of best when you're doing a funnel experiment, it determines how many people in that audience made it to that step. So while store access got the most people to actually like click in to that store was that final hours part, but when it came to accessing the store and then adding that item to cart, both sale and final hours were pretty comparable. That control one didn't get us too far. Now, most people who actually get to make it to the shopping cart, we saw that final hours is most successful. And then over across the board, that final hour seems to be most successful. So if I'm looking at this data and I'm like, what do I want to change? I likely will show that the final hours messaging did make it the furthest. This number here shows us the percentage of people who made it to that stage. So right here, we're seeing about 70% of people are making it to that stage, while only about 2.67% of people are actually getting to that customer checkout. So in looking at those numbers, you can see how similar they are, and it can help you make better decisions on like what happens. And then you can definitely see the overall point here when it's like, what is our relatively compared to our control? So that overall probability to be best, we'll see that here at the bottom. So it tracks that final conversion rate, that final probability to be best at each phase. You can really dive in. If you want to see more, you can continue to export data and you can export it to further analyze. But at any point, if you're like, yep, I'm done with this experiment, I can go ahead and click stop that experiment and determine that final hours one was best. And it's like, have enough data. So again, once I've stopped the experiment, it'll automatically turn on that final hours variation and I can stop from there. But cool ways, a couple other ways we can test that is like if we're going into that live events, we can see where this connected in our flags are. So I don't currently have my flag set to on, so that will be a thing there. But if I go and I'll see that store highlight text on, we can go in and start to see these triggers happen. So again, opening this up, I'm going to open up live events. It's connected. It's waiting for a event. It'll tell me, like, it even says like, yep, the last flag evaluation occurred 28 seconds ago. So that's when something was determined. Go ahead and refresh. Let's go through the process and watch these flags, these events come through. So we want to log in. We're starting to see, hey, it's picking up. Someone's logged in. Starting to see it's determining if I'm getting that call out or not. I'm going to open some carts. I'm going to buy some cool stuff here. I'm going to close this tab. I'm going to check out, and it'll give me that, starting to see as it's coming through, how many metrics I'm clicking in that experiment, how many of those custom metrics I'm hitting, how many flags I've evaluated, and what opportunities are coming up to me. So we can check that it's working by using that live events feed. Again, really make sure that you are testing with a browser that does not have the ad block on. That's something I've done a lot, so make sure that it's off. But that is how to create a funnel experiment within LaunchDarkly using our core demo. If you have any questions at all, I'm happy to help. Please reach out to the developer relations team. And thank you for following along.